Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. I'm Mike Calabrese, joined by my Action Network co-hosts, all college basketball experts here at the table. Josh Nunn, aka Duck, and Christian Odjakjian. We got some midweek college hoops action to dig into. And as always, we're going to get through some of our rants, some of our higher level looks. But if you want to go ahead and stick around for our best bets, we're going to hit games from Thursday and Friday, maybe even a look for the weekend. Lots to get into. But let's start here. I'm going to pose a question to the team to get us kickstarted. And this kind of came up, Hoops Vision over on YouTube. It's a great account to follow if you want to learn a little bit more about the statistical nature of college basketball, some film cut-ups. They basically brought to the table this week this conversation around Arizona. And it's the fact that on one end of the spectrum, you have a team like Nebraska, who's firing up more than 50% of their shots from the field being from three-point range. And then Arizona's all the way on the other end of the spectrum. And it's clearly worked for both programs. They were able to race out to 21, 22 wins in a row to start the season. But obviously they're playing a different brand of basketball. And there's national pundits like Jalen Rose who say they can't win the national championship taking 5, 6, 7 threes in a game. That could be just a quick run from another team. It kind of, ties one arm behind their back. I would say that this is not by accident. This is Tommy Lloyd's system. It's built on hunting quality shots inside of the arc. And it's also made them very consistent. I know what I'm going to get from them offensively down the stretch. So I'll go to Duck first on this one. Do you think they're more vulnerable or more stable in terms of a betting option when it comes to March by sheer, factor of them not firing up so many threes?
Well, it really doesn't impact my assessment on if they can make a deep run. When you look at Arizona, they have been a team that has shown the ability to knock down threes. They're shooting at a high percentage, and they have 5 players on their team that have nailed at least 16 three-point shots on the season. You look at Braden Burries, Anthony Delorso, Jaden Bradley. These guys can snipe it from deep. They just haven't had to. And I look at where Arizona is going to set up in the NCAA tournament. Getting to the second weekend should be a breeze. If you're looking at potential 8-9 matchups, Utah State, NC State, Villanova, Scotty, Iowa, these teams are going to get eaten alive by Arizona's athleticism, their transition play, their defensive prowess. So it really comes down to the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8 matchups and the draw for teams like Kansas, Virginia, St. John's, Bama, Texas Tech. There could be some concern based on the draw with how the defensive styles of an opponent may play out. More concern to me with Arizona is that there's been very little pressure put on these guys that they've had to overcome this season. I mean, what's their biggest deficit that they've faced this year? 5 points. So my question is, can Tommy Lloyd get past the Sweet 16 as we've seen some talented Arizona teams that have squandered opportunities and not gotten the job done in March. Arizona hasn't been to the Final Four since 2001. They know it. The fans know it. As we get deeper and deeper into March, the pressure is going to start to mount. So what happens for Arizona when they get punched in the mouth and they have to withstand a 13-2 run, and you look up at the under 4 timeout in the first half and you're down by 8 and you're not in one of those high pressure situations because you didn't have to face it all season? I think this bunch needs more of those scenarios. I don't think it would be a bad thing for them to have a poor performance and be down by 10 at the half and have to come back and really dig deep in grit. That's what I would be worried about with Arizona. It doesn't have anything to do with how many three-point shots they take, in my opinion.
At least my take on this is that kind of in line with what you were saying, Duck. They have the ability to knock down the shots. They're choosing not to take them. So if they are in a situation where they're down 5 to 8 points in the first half and they need to rev that up a little bit, I don't think necessarily it's going to come as a great shock to them or be a situation where they don't have the shooters to work on the perimeter. I also like what I'm seeing in terms of the maturation of Burries. They're getting Pete involved better in the offense in terms of like lobs, getting him, higher percentage shots at the basket. So I think both of those guys, we haven't necessarily seen their best basketball over a consistent stretch yet. So even though they're the number one team in the country, they're an analytics darling, I still think there's more to come in terms of this ceiling potentially if they could get consistent play from both of them. What do you think, Christian, in terms of Arizona as it relates to the three ball and their overall ceiling on this season?
We're going to learn a lot about them, at Kansas, Texas Tech at home, BYU at home, at Houston, at Baylor. Home against Kansas is a ridiculous schedule. I agree that it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for them to lose. They probably lose 1 or 2 of those, and they're still the number 1 overall seed. Here's what I find funny about this dialogue, though. When someone like Jalen Rose comes on and says this thing about the three-point rate, like, just so out of touch for numerous reasons. One is that they were 280th in three-point rate the last 2 seasons with Caleb freaking Love on their team. And guess who went 0 for 9 from deep against Clemson in a game where I wanted them to be pounding it inside more and not settling, right? When you have a point guard like Jaden Bradley, who Tommy Lloyd continually talks about is the best point guard in the country, which I'm not putting him in that conversation, or I'm sorry, he's in the conversation, but I'm not giving him the number one title. He has been elite. And if you're box score watching and you look and see Jaden Bradley shooting 44% from three, you're like, oh, he should take more threes. No, he shouldn't. Guess what? That's not his game. He'll take those when he's wide open, or, you know what I'm saying? Like he had a clutch one against UCLA in that game. But I'm fine with Koa Pete not being a volume 3-point shooter. Like Dwayne Aristode, Del Orso, and Karchenkov are in Burries. Do you have shooters? You know, as Duck mentioned, you have shooters, and I'm fine with Del Orso playing, who's only been 29% by the way this year. He's a great shooter. Like you got to look beyond the numbers with things like that. And I also think about the fact that what would I say my number one weakness would be with this Arizona team? Not weakness, but the way they find themselves into trouble is if someone can successfully slow the tempo down on them. They lost to Princeton 59-55 in that game. And all of a sudden, when you slow tempo down with Arizona, if you guys remember that game, it was like Kirk Kriisa and Courtney Ramey like pulling up from way too deep. It's like, we don't want that. What happened to playing through to Bellis and your NBA big guys, right? Down low. And you look at this year, they're 2 close games on away from home at UConn, which of course UConn was missing pieces, and UCLA. The finals in that game were 69-65 and 71-67. So I think Houston, Texas Tech, Kansas, more half-court oriented teams are going to give Arizona a run for their money. But the 3-point rate is not an issue when, one, they're clearly the number one team in the country to this point, and two, you have guys that can clearly shoot the basketball.
Guys, I think the thing to look at as well in the NCAA tournament is this is a one and done scenario. And if you are banking on a team that is heavily reliant on the 3-ball and you get on a neutral court with the NCAA tournament logo going and you're playing at 11 o'clock Eastern time in an unfamiliar place, that creates a lot of elemented variance when you're reliant on the 3-ball. If Arizona is going to get beat, specifically early in this tournament, they are really going to have something fluky happen because they're not going to get out athleted in the first couple of rounds. It's going to take a special performance, and if Arizona were to be defeated later on in the tournament, they are legitimately going to get beaten by a better team. It's not going to come down to fluky shooting variance. I think it actually provides a little more consistency that Arizona runs their stuff. They're not extremely and extravagantly reliant on the 3-point shot. I think you get a little bit less volatility with them that way.
All right, let's go from the number one team in the country to a conference that not many people have kept their eye on, and that is the WAC. And you want to talk to me about the Wolverines, Duck.
Well, guys, look, I get it. Like the politics and the stuff going on with realignment, NIL, people coming and going. But what's happening with Utah Valley is bad for them and also for the WAC. The Wolverines have potentially their best team ever. They're tied for first place in the Western Athletic Conference. They're undefeated at home. Utah Valley is leaving the WAC, and they're heading to the Big West next season along with Cal Baptist. And there is some dispute over Utah Valley constituents and the WAC representation and the exit fee and what should be paid and what shouldn't be paid. Utah Valley has not paid the fee, and they're digging their heels in and likely going to be ruled ineligible for postseason competition. What this means is no conference tournament, no NCAA tournament likely. They're just refusing to pay the fee. This is not good for the student athletes or the WAC at large. You want to send your best representation to the NCAA tournament, and now the WAC is likely not going to do that. They're also going to only have 6 participating teams in the postseason conference tournament. You look at the WAC, they're a mess. They're losing Southern Utah and Utah Tech to the Big Sky. They're only going to have 3 remaining schools, which are going to be absorbed into the ASUN. They're going to form a new league that way. But it's just turning into such a saga. It's a shame for Utah Valley's team, their players. Everything they've worked so hard for is going to get ruined due to a snafu with the fee. And so it's really just a shame because I was kind of looking forward to seeing Utah Valley possibly make an appearance in the NCAA tournament.
I think one piece that comes out of it, Dominique Daniels, the guard for Cal Baptist, is must-watch television. So if he ends up helping them punch a ticket to the big dance, I think that would be a fun team to follow. I'm also going to follow in your footsteps of this rant. I'm ready to fade Utah Valley down the stretch here because the emotional fallout from it. Like you can't overstate this. This is why you care to play at a school like this. It's the opportunity to be on the biggest stage, something you'll talk about for the rest of your life. Even if you get boat raced in the first round of March Madness, just getting there is a once in a lifetime opportunity. And it's that carrot that coaches use throughout the offseason when things get tough, when you have difficult travel schedule, all of it. It's like, this is what we're moving towards. Now they're kind of listless at this point. So I immediately want to fade them. All right, Christian, what are you burning on this week?
I tweeted out earlier today that Baylor and Alabama are combined 3 of 9 from adding James Nagy and Charles Bediako respectively to their rosters. It's been cool to see the basketball world say a lot of people saying we don't want to ever hate watch, but like this is karma. I do for one think Alabama's going to. Bediako's a much better player, and I think Alabama's just kind of had a tough schedule and dealing with a lot of injuries lately, and they're going to start to play better. But I kind of want to talk about Baylor, man, and Scott Drew, who was kind of at the top of the college basketball world for a second. The COVID year, they were going to be a number 1 seed and a legit team to win the title. They win the title the next year, 1 seed the next year, 3 seeds the next few years. You're getting all these NBA one and done guards. And ever since Jerome Tang left, who, has an awesome first year at Kansas State, gets him to the Elite Eight, probably should have made the Final Four, one of the most fun March Madness runs with Marquise Noel. That marriage splitting, outside of one great year of Kansas State, has really been a failure. I don't know if Kansas State's going to get rid of Jerome Tang, but I think he has proven that he is not a good head coach at all. They've had dysfunction. They've thrown around money. They suck to watch. And I'm just out on Kansas State, and they're a team that I've been looking to fade the last couple years. He had his little fluky 9-0 overtime run to start his tenure there. But the irony is I think Baylor misses him. I'm not saying he doesn't know. He's obviously a good basketball coach because Baylor's defense has fallen off a cliff the last few years without Jerome Tang. Baylor they build this fancy new arena. They're 2-7 in Big 12 play. They lost their entire roster. I understand you plan to have Rob Wright back, and it sucks when a team in your conference can throw $3 million at him. But I don't think I thought Yesufu was supposed to be a star. You go and get guys like Dan Skillings who can't shoot when you're a team that, Scott Drew loves to have guys that can really fill it up from deep. Cam Carr has been a revelation, but it just hasn't been enough. And that's just on top of the fact that they were the ones to finally break the seal and add someone who was drafted to the NBA. So just 2 teams in the Big 12 that, Baylor's much more talented than Kansas State. It's fun to watch PJ Haggerty, but I don't want to root for anyone's failures, but it's kind of like head scratching, and I just think they kind of stink.
Speaking of hate watching, let's talk about Doug Gottlieb for a moment. I've never liked the guy. I don't know if I've ever met anyone who's liked him. Even Oklahoma State grads playing at points, like the guy's an asshole. He just has he has all the personality of, Dan Hurley when he's on a rant, but none of the coaching acumen. All that being said, though, does he kind of have a point about Ken Pom not being able to filter in the fact that you're playing with a half deck? Like Evan Mia gets into this all the time with his lineups and how specific we get into the factor of the value of a particular player and them stepping out. And I understand that. So this is one of those memes where it's like, did the worst person in the world just kind of make a decent point? I guess. I don't know what his overall rant was. It's like, Green Bay, you're treading water. You're 12-12 this year. You're not going to go anywhere in the postseason. So I don't think it necessarily has anything to do with them being shortchanged. But I do think the analytics community, year over year, college hoops just gets better and better and better. And it's like, Evan Mia's website is like the, Wonka factory of putting out new confections every year. It's like new data tools, new, visualizations. There's all kinds of people that play off of the data from Ken Pom and Torvik and Haslametric and everything else. I feel like we're close. We should be getting closer to a place of being able to compare when teams are simply just not the same, whether it's injury or how they're playing. We still, I feel, are living in an environment where you beat a team that is in the top 5 earlier in the season, and by the end of the year, they kind of fall apart. They got people looking to go to the portal. This is all just a hypothetical, but it happens every single year. Not every win is exactly the same based on when you beat a team and what kind of deck that they have. I saw that you tweeted about this, Christian. I'll let you take the first crack at this. Any thoughts on what we could do as an analytics community to kind of bridge the gap a little bit? It's just common sense. We know as fans that there are elements that maybe they're not quantifiable, but I think there's got to be some way from a personnel standpoint to bridge the gap and say, we beat a team at full strength. We beat a team without their starting point guard. That should count as different things.
Congratulations, Doug Gottlieb. You pointed out that context matters and that the model can't take into effect if a player's girlfriend dumps him the night before, he might not play as well. But guess what? Boogie Fland out, Arkansas is better. Marcus Burton out, Notre Dame worse. There's no way to standardize and accurately weigh for injuries and improvement throughout the season. The point about Miami, Ohio having like bye game stuff, guess what? That's mixed in to the metric. That's why they're still outside of the top 75, if I'm not mistaken, in KenPom. It's clearly a good metric. It's clearly not perfect. It can't take every piece of data in. And guess what? If in your little world where context matters for you, Doug Gottlieb, but nobody else, maybe you're instead of 239th, you're 200th on KenPom. So I understand his frustration, and I understand how certain coaches feel like they're getting screwed over by metrics and self-fulfilling prophecies once you enter conference play of, Cleveland State is like, I understand his point. Cleveland State's won 4 straight. Their record in KenPom says they're bad, but they're not. But at the end of the day, we're trying to take everything into account, and you're not being fairly scrutinized Green Bay or the Horizon League, in my opinion.
All right, before we hop into our best bets, one final team that I want to talk about real quick, and it's Texas A&M. Is the market just wrong on this? What are they catching? 7.5, 8 against Alabama? Buckyball, I think, has exceeded expectations early on here, but is there a team with a record at this level that is more overlooked and disrespected than the Aggies? I'll kick it to you first, Duck.
Well, I mean, we're going to find out how good they really are. These guys really took some time to get fully acclimated to the buckyball system, and they took some early season losses as a result. But it appears a different group than the one that took the court from early December and prior. They're much more confident. They're shooting well. They're forcing turnovers at the highest rate in the conference on defense. A&M is the second best three-point shooting team, best foul shooting team in the conference. They defend well without fouling. You look at guys like Pop Isaacs and Marcus Hill who can stroke it. Agee is athletic and just super hungry on the offensive glass. Can really impact the game in a variety of ways. I think we're really going to find out a lot about this bunch coming up with games against Alabama, Florida, Missouri, Vandy. I mean, it's kind of a loaded back-end slate full of really good SEC teams. But I'm here to tell you right now, A&M is not a team you want to be paired up with in the second round of the NCAA tournament. If you see them on the 7 or 8 line, could be some major trouble lining up against the Aggies. Bucky's got them playing good basketball right now.
Now, Nate Oates, 4th best against the spread performance on the home floor since joining the SEC and this Alabama program in 2019. Do you think that's what this number is predicated on? Do you think the market's just expecting a bounce back after they get their doors blown off at the O-Dome, Christian?
Well, A&M's 5-0 against the spread this year as a dog, covering by 16 points at least in all of them. I kind of hesitated to, bringing back our boy Doug's point, right? In the first 2 weeks of the season, A&M lost by 24 at Oklahoma State and by 12 at home to UCF. They are a different team, was a first-year head coach, but they're still up to 27th in KenPom because the metric takes into account the entire season of data. And obviously been playing great basketball since then. Their only 2 losses since those 2 games came in overtime. When I look at a spot to go against them, so I thought Tennessee was going to blow the doors off them, when A&M went and sent that game to double overtime. And then I bet against them again with Georgia. I'm like, Georgia's comfortable playing at a faster speed. They have a ton of guys who can handle the ball. They're fine with it being a more up and down game, right? And they go on the road and they're up 20 like soon after, and they win that game by 15. Alabama, I'm once again looking at, they can handle this pace of play, and Alabama takes good care of the basketball. So I'm not rushing to go take the points with A&M, but I think, Doug, you make an interesting point about in the tournament setting, it's kind of like the Syracuse 2-3 zone. It's like when you have a curveball, that you're so comfortable playing, and for other teams on shorter prep having to play against such a distinct style, they suck to play against. Like the quote that Rylan Griffin said to, I think it was Josh Hubbard, like, Josh Hubbard's like, yeah, are you guys going to press all game? He's like, absolutely. They suck to play against. And you keep looking at how can Rashawn Agee at 6'8" continue to be so elite rebounding the basketball and not be getting exploited for playing small ball 5? Just hasn't been happening. Like, okay, well, what happens when you play Florida? Is that when the doors get blown off and you lose a game by 20? Maybe. We'll see. But clearly a very good basketball team and a really fun one to watch, too.
Don't miss any of our best bets by signing up for Action Pro. Action Pro users get real-time alerts anytime experts like Stuckey, Christian, Duck, or myself track picks in the app. You also get real-time money percentages for any of the games on the network, which basically is everything, particularly in college sports. So you're going to be able to see where the smart money is flowing and have access to our NFL player prop projections before the Super Bowl from Sean Kerner and his predictive analytics team. Dr. Nick is also giving out college basketball player props, so you're going to want to go ahead and get in on those as well. Get the best bets at the best prices. And now, to celebrate Super Bowl 60, you can get $60 off an annual subscription of Action Pro. Just go to actionnetwork.com/pro to get started. That's $60 off at actionnetwork.com/pro. All right, now on to the good stuff. We got all of our best bets here for Thursday and Friday. We're going to go around rapid fire style. It wouldn't be a show with Duck if we didn't start with an ugly, gross under. Thank you so much for bringing it to the table, as always, Mr. Nunn. Texas Tech, Western Illinois. Leathernecks have been a good bet on unders this year, and this one's projected just about at 140. Talk me through your cutoff number and why, the narrative and the game flow all seems to be trending to an under, in your opinion.
Yeah, well, Western Illinois has been one of my favorite under teams in the entire country. These guys are 359th nationally in offensive efficiency and 324th in offensive possession length. The Leathernecks are methodical. They can't score. They don't shoot the ball very well. 347th in three-point percentage. The Leathernecks are 361st in post shooting and 335th in foul shooting. They're going to be forced deep into the shot clock regularly and will have to resort to contested jumpers, which they don't want to shoot, or they'll turn the ball over. And a lot of the turnovers are shot clock violations, errant passes, traveling, things that don't result in runouts on the other end. I look at Tennessee Tech. They've played some of the quicker paced teams in the OVC in recent games, including Tennessee State, Lindenwood, Southern Indiana. But I'm not convinced that these guys really want to run a high tempo game, especially with how the Golden Eagles struggle with turning the ball over, which they do 332nd overall nationally. There's very weak post play for Tennessee Tech. Danny Pounds, Jawan Nichols, they're decent OVC players, but they don't shoot the ball exceedingly well. Mecky Cameron, he can get hot from deep, or he could go 2 for 11 from deep. I look at the last meeting between these two, which ended 59-54 and played to 63 total possessions. We had 26 turnovers. We had 8 total made threes, and we had 42 first half points. I think we see this one play out similarly. This should be a dead nut under. I think we're getting a little value in this total based on some of the final scores from these two teams in recent games. But this one should be first 1 to 60 wins this. If we're getting 140, absolutely an under.
All right, Christian, you're looking at Ohio State traveling to College Park, and Buzz Williams is not a turnaround specialist by any stretch. You look at Virginia Tech, his first year there, I think he won 11 games, won 16 in year one in College Station, coaching up Texas A&M. So the expectations weren't necessarily that he was going to elevate this team to the tournament and they were going to make a deep run, but this has been an unmitigated disaster. Like, this has been so bad, it calls into question, is he the right fit? Can he recruit in the next cycle? What are they going to do to get things going in the right direction? Do you think we've seen the floor with this Maryland team, or is there any value in a market overcorrection to then take them as a home dog?
Yeah, they're terrible, man. They're really, really bad. And I backed them against USC a couple weeks ago, and they were in the game because Diggy Coit was cooking. He had 30 in the game, but in the second half, they could not get a stop against a USC team that didn't have Chad Baker-Mazara and pre-Elijah Arenas, like a U.S. team that couldn't score on anybody. And in the second half, they literally couldn't get a stop. I found myself getting into trouble in some of these Big Ten Thursday, Friday windows where there's like not as many games going on. But I'm just looking at Bruce Thornton, who we've talked about as a guy, one of the best potential. If he doesn't make the NCAA tournament this year, he'll be one of the best 4-year out of school power conference players that never made the tournament. And he's a winning player. He's not some empty stats kind of guy. And I saw clips of him yelling at his guys in the 92-82 loss at Wisconsin. You got 4 days off to go play the worst team in the league. If you're laying 8 or 9, I mean, this should be all Ohio State. Like with a leader like that for a much better team, I expect them to go take care of business. And the tax on being, on the road or a theoretical, I mean, like you said, Mike, has the floor bottom now. Could they really be this bad? They are that bad, and I expect Bruce and the boys to go in there and take care of business. I'd lay up to 10 there.
All right, Thursday, I like Abilene Christian plus 13.5. That's at least the projection. I would take them down to 12 at Utah Valley. As Duck mentioned, Utah Valley now ineligible for the WAC conference tournament, which also means their opportunity to go dancing has gone up in smoke. That's devastating to any team, but certainly a team that's in a tie for first place at this point in the season makes this a massive letdown spot. Brett Tanner took over for Joe Golding at Abilene Christian 5 years ago, and he kept the Wildcats calling card that helped them secure a March Madness upset of Texas and Shaka Smart with suffocating on-ball defense. They press, they blitz every single ball screen, they're active with their hands, like every single defender. The result is 20.2% of opponent possessions end in a turnover. That's the third best mark in the entire country. And Utah Valley, by the way, is horrific when facing pressure. They're 349th in turnover percentage. That is a strength versus weakness battle right away. So I want to take a team that's catching double-digit points when you have a massive advantage like that. Now, obviously, the drawback is if you watch Abilene Christian, they gamble defensively. They're trying to trap. They're going to let you be able to get easy buckets, on the other side, and sometimes even in the half court, they're just allowing full-on layups. And efficient offenses are going to take advantage. Utah Valley 17th nationally in shooting percentage, so they're going to get plenty of easy looks and buckets. But in this first matchup, I've already seen it. Now, granted, it was on ACU's home floor, but they created 22 turnovers and they won the game going away 85-68. The Wildcats have been in a shooting slump since, but that's just given us value on this number. I think it's going to keep it closer to 13 or 13.5. If we get a quality performance out of Braden Hubbard, I should say, I think their chances of winning this game outright are not, it's a non-0% chance in a spot like this, but I'm going to play it safe. I'm going to take the points. Hubbard, if he can give me 15, 18 points, I think they cover. I think if he gets into the mid-20s, there's a chance that they win this one outright. All right, back to you on Thursday, Duck. When you came to visit here in the greater Philadelphia area, spent the weekend together watching college hoops, you couldn't shut up about Quinnipiac. So I'm going to give you the full floor here. If there's any Quinnipiac grads in the audience, this is your best 5 minutes of the entire BBOC season. So talk me through the Bobs.
Well, I've made a joke before. My three favorite college basketball conferences are the MAC, and the MEAC. Not really true, but I like to say that anyway. Quinnipiac on Thursday, projected spread of 13 at home against Canisius. Canisius cannot shoot the basketball, and the Golden Griffs play at a treacherously slow pace. They're 353rd nationally in adjusted offensive efficiency, 357th in two-point shooting. And they're not going to be able to attack Quinnipiac in the post here. So Canisius is going to have to shoot the long ball in order to stay in this one. And doing that on the road without Nyblack or Bernard, going to be real trouble for Canisius. If a guy like Khalil Singleton were to happen to go 6 of 11 from deep, this could be close, but I would absolutely not bank on that on the road. Quinnipiac is a really talented team in the MAC. You've got Amari Monroe, Jaden Zimmerman, who's really getting back into the swing here after missing some time with injury. 8 games back from injury, double-figure scoring in every single one of them, and 3 times he's had at least 7 assists. So he's facilitating well. Asim Jones can go for 20 every night. I look at Quinnipiac. They do not turn the ball over. They should shred Canisius in the lane. Canisius does not have the firepower to keep up here, and they should get shredded defensively. I'll lay up to 13.5 here with Quinnipiac.
All right. Big game on Friday night, and that is UConn and St. John's. This one should be an absolute war because St. John's defensively can really ratchet it up. They have the flexibility. They have positionless basketball on the defensive ends where they can take away everything that you want to do. Offensively, they leave a lot to be desired. I mean, Darling has been a nice addition in conference play. He certainly helps them close out games, as you saw against DePaul. I think he made 6 straight foul shots to end that game and slam the door on the Blue Demons. But outside of that, they can go long stretches without scoring, and that's why you're targeting the under here, Christian.
Yeah, I was at St. John's DePaul last night, got some live eyes on the Johnnies, and what you just said, Mike, it definitely popped off screen. I also think last year, the first matchup between UConn and St. John's was a slog, 68-62. The total for this one should probably be around 140. The second one ended up being 89-75. A key reason why that score got up is UConn had 18 turnovers in that game. And this season, UConn hasn't been great at taking care of the basketball. Actually, they're second to last in the Big East in league play. But knowing Dan Hurley and that turnovers were such a key problem in that last matchup against Patino and St. John's, I think that'll be a point of emphasis. But when I'm also projecting what half-court possessions look like for both these teams, I'm thinking about St. John's' optionality and switchability being really important for helping track with UConn's off-ball movement. UConn's one knock this year is that like the reason they're not top 4 on KenPom and that they're at 10th is because they're not a very efficient 2-point offense. Saus Damari is the only kind of guy off the bounce who's really getting in there and setting guys up. Most of their offense is all about the off-ball movement in Terrace Reed setting moving screens and the shooters running around. They have so much shooting, but I think St. John's ability to stay with that action, and UConn is a slower tempo team the way their sets develop. I think St. John's will develop there, and then St. John's offensively, man, it's these DHOs from like the elbow, where Bryce Hopkins will get it, and then it's, do I just go put my head down, try to get to the line, or do I kick it out to a guy who's not going to shoot an open three? Their offensive possessions, they're so athletic, and you have guys who can shoot, like Sellers can shoot, Darling can shoot, as you mentioned, Jackson can shoot, but there's just a lot of possessions. I use the words archaic and aimless, and when Zuby has Terrace Reed to deal with instead of someone that he can absolutely overpower, I think it's going to be tough for them too. So as long as this game doesn't get too out in the open floor and UConn takes good care of the basketball, I think it'll be a lower scoring, gritty game at the Garden.
Let's talk price sensitivity for a moment, because Torvik and Evan Mia are actually pretty far apart on this one for the total. You got Mia looking at it at 148 and Torvik closer to 143.5. What is your cutoff point in terms of this under?
Yeah, and KenPom's got it at 145. So splitting that, I think it'll get bet down, so I'm going to be on it right away. But if I'm getting 145, that's an easy call for me for the under, and I'd probably play it up to. Honestly, anything above, I can't imagine it drops below like 142 or something like that, but I'd be comfortable. I think this is going to be in the high 60s.
All right, I'm going to go back in time to Thursday, looking at Northeastern traveling to Hofstra. Projections calling for the Flying Dutchman to lay between 8, 9, 9.5, 10. I go up to 10 on this one. The Pride skid is over. They lost 5 straight at one point, with 4 of those 5 losses coming by 5 points or less. This offense has the potential to pop. They're 89th in KenPom, 55th in offensive rebounding rate, and Cruz Davis just pulled out of an 8 for 35 slump with a 24-point outing on 60% shooting against Monmouth. That is what I needed. I was keeping my money on the sideline with Hofstra because I got bit during that losing streak and a bit of his cold shooting. But now that I finally saw the ball go through the hoop for him, I'm ready to jump back on this bandwagon. He can be special in this game for one reason. Northeastern is awful defensively, but particularly on the perimeter. Jalen Counter from Charleston just gave them 28 and 11 assists. 2 games before that, Eric Pratt from Stony Brook went for 31 and 9. Mark Cruz down for 25 and let's call it 8 assists in this one. Northeastern 1 and 7 against the spread in their last 8, showing just how poorly they've been playing vis-a-vis expectations. I think this is going to be another against the spread loss, so I'll go ahead and play the Pride. All right, Duck, let's close out your card here with Evansville versus Valpo, going with another under for a projection in about, the late 130s. Let's call it 137.5.
Yeah, let's look at Evansville. They have the worst offense in the Missouri Valley Conference. Turnovers on 21% of overall possessions. Again, many of these are going to be shot clock violations, errant passes, traveling, just bad situational execution. Evansville is 330th in three-point shooting, 232nd from inside the arc, and the pace has slowed significantly for Evansville the second half of the league schedule. They're 7th in overall tempo in Missouri Valley play. Just cannot get a lot going. They don't get to the line. There's 0 offensive rebounding, just horrific turning the ball over. Not going to go well here on the road against Valpo. Valpo plays at a pace that is 296 nationally, the slowest in this conference. These guys are good, but they don't shoot the ball overly well. 337th in overall effective field goal percentage. And Valpo is 344th nationally from inside the arc, 274th from outside. I look at Valparaiso. They really need a good defensive showing after getting the Belmont treatment and then following that up with uninspiring defensive performances against Indiana State and Bradley. I think we see it here. I've got this one pegged about 72-58 final. So at 137.5, I show value on the under.
All right, I'm going to throw in one more here, and it's on Friday. Bradley catching 5.5 at Northern Iowa. I'm always in favor of taking points against teams that struggle to score. The Panthers are 253rd in shooting efficiency. They really struggle from the line, shooting just 66%, which is 340th in the whole country. So if they're looking to close out this game late and Bradley's chasing 3-pointers, I think you can get yourself a backdoor, because to be that weak from the line, and then also on top of things, they're almost dead last in offensive rebounding. So there's just not a lot of extra opportunities for Northern Iowa to, point pad in this one. Trey Campbell has been hit or miss lately as their go-to scorer. It's really been Will Hornseth who's been stepping up for them the past 2 weeks. Luckily, in terms of this matchup, Bradley has the best wing defender who kind of plays either small forwards or stretch fours in AJ Smith. He's the second best rated defender at that position per Evan Mia in the Valley. So I like that, being able to take away their strongest player really in the last 2 weeks. On the Bradley side of things, they have the firepower to outscore UNI as they did in their first meeting when they won 75-69 in Peoria. And as always, there's a chance for a nuclear game out of Jaquan Johnson, their point guard. He already has 3 games this season with at least 29 points and 5 assists, and he's been uber efficient, including their meeting with Northern Iowa earlier this year, where he went for 17 points, 6 assists, and 0 turnovers. This is the stretch run of the Valley. Before we get to Arch Madness, everyone is looking to avoid the side of the bracket with Belmont, and you need to get a 2 or a 3 seed to do that because the 4-5 matchup filters right into Belmont as the 1. So this is a must-win for Bradley with Belmont on deck and Murray State on March 1st, just over the horizon. So I think you're going to get a full effort. This is a team they already beat, and a team that I just don't think trends to really cover larger numbers on the verge of being 2 possessions. So if I get 5.5, that would be great. I would play it down to 5 in this spot. All right, before we get out of here, we're going to run through our favorite bets for a bit of a midweek parlay. Duck, you're going to add in the Leatherneck under, and why not? These guys have just been an ATM on unders this season.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a fun watch. It's going to be sloppy basketball. It's going to be slow paced. You're going to get a lot of short jumpers, a lot of one and dones, a lot of turnovers, but I just don't see how, based on the shooting percentages, based on the way the first meeting went, and based on the overall pace, it would take miraculous shooting numbers to surpass this projected total of 140.5. So I'm going to use this as my favorite play of the episode here, under 140.5, Tennessee Tech, Western Illinois.
Now, I swear we didn't plan this, Christian, but we've come all the way around from Green Bay basketball, talking Doug Gottlieb and the guy who replaced an all-timer name, Sundance Wicks, now the head coach at Wyoming. You want to fade him on Saturday. Talk me through the projected number and where you'd play it to.
Yeah, jumping a bit ahead to Saturday here. So Wyoming and Utah State played on Wednesday the 28th. And at Utah State, one of the best environments in the country, Utah State won 94-62. And the important takeaway from this game is that Wyoming sat in this awful zone the entire game. And Utah State it felt like 50 wide open corner threes, and you refused to get out of the zone. So is there a chance that Wyoming has a much better defensive game plan this time after just kind of getting smoked like that? Maybe, but watching that game, Utah State is just on a completely other level, and the fact that they even opted to go zone when they weren't comfortable with the zone shows you that they were really scared about containing Fall 7, MJ Collins, and these guys in their standard defense. So after that 30-point blowout, it looks like they're going to be laying around 7 in Laramie. I think Utah State is just so far ahead of Wyoming, and I think Calhoun's boys are going to go in there and get the road win.
Any concerns about the additional 3,000 feet of altitude going from Logan to Laradice?
Is it that much? I know Logan's almost a mile high, isn't it?
Yeah, so we're at like 4,500 for Logan and almost 7,300 for Laramie. Wow.
I mean, I try to factor altitude into some senses, but in the Mountain West, I feel like they're used to just switching altitudes frequently, so not factoring that one into the cap. But yeah, I did not know that. Shout out Laramie.
Yeah, but the thing is, too, with Utah State, sorry to chime in, Utah State plays at elevation anyway. This isn't like San Diego State going to Colorado State and then Laramie back-to-back, and you're having gassed legs on the second half and you can't hit a mid-range jumper. I think that the elevation is generally something absolutely to factor, but I don't think it'll impact Utah State as much because they already play at 4,900 feet.
All right, we'll close it out with my favorite pick from the episode. I just love Hofstra in this spot. I think they're absolutely going to crush Northeastern. Northeastern is in free fall at this point, and Hofstra still has an opportunity to get their season right, position themselves for the CAA tournament, which I think is going to be one of the better, mid-major tournaments in all of basketball this year. When you have a guy like Cruz Davis, you have an opportunity on any given night to run away from somebody. That's what I'm looking for them to do, right on the verge of laying double digits. All right, that'll do it for today's episode of the Big Bets on Campus podcast. A special thanks to my co-hosts Christian and Duck. And a reminder that you don't want to miss the BBOC weekend preview with Stuckey, Greg, and Jim on Friday mornings, and the three-man weave early on Mondays with their weekly preview. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any of the action that we're giving out. Also, on Saturdays, we have our live show over on YouTube, so be sure to catch that to get the best bets at the best prices. Leave us a 5-star rating and review. That always helps. We'd love to give out some more futures tickets to some people that have given out those 5-star reviews. As a matter of fact, our latest 5-star rating and review, Elite Insight, Real Data, No Noise from CLKB6, given lots of flowing language for the work that Duck and I do. Let's see. Deeply analytical, data-driven, and razor-sharp in how he breaks things down, giving all of the love to Duck in that regard. Lots of credibility when Calabrese is on the mic as well. We appreciate it. We're trying to do our best here, and every single 5-star rating and review gives us a better chance to grow the brand. So Duck is going to go ahead and give you a $10 future of your choice. You want to put it on the Wooden Award, team to make the Final Four, national championship, whatever you like. Reach out to him. How can he find you on X, Duck?
Yeah, at Step on a Duck, you can reach out to me. We'll get that future logged in for you.
Thanks again for listening to the Big Bets on Campus podcast, and we'll see you at the window.